Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, thank you for joining us. Thank you for the conversation that we had earlier this week. I want to focus, at least initially, on security of our diplomats and the facilities around the globe in which they work. The budget sees a decrease in worldwide security protection account of about $562 million from last year. Is there, first of all, I would say I heard you in response, I think, to Senator Leahy, indicate that we can't judge our priorities necessarily by the levels of spending. I think that's an indicator, but I think the point you make is there's other components that determine whether or not we will be successful. I assume that I know it's the shared goal that every person who works for the State Department who represents the United States around the globe has a safe environment, as safe as we can provide to them. So my question is, in this case, what has changed, or what will we do different that means that our State Department employees' safety is not diminished?
Well, you are correct, Senator. We've made the safety of not just our State Department employees, but Americans broadly our highest priorities, certainly as it relates to our embassy presence, our consular office presence, and our missions around the world. If you examine the security elements of the budget, our budget for diplomatic security is actually up 11% year on year. Where we have reductions has to do with some of the construction, the buildings, part of the budget for embassies and other facilities. Part of that we'll manage with some multi-year commitments across 17 to 18. And some of this has to do with just our ability to move projects along promptly. We are clearly committed to the Benghazi ARB recommendations, and I'm monitoring those carefully. We have some gaps we need to close. The OIG has helped us identify some of those. We're going to stay on top of those. If there were more funds there, we would simply try to step up more activity on some of the building and maintenance issues. So most of the reduction is in building and maintenance efforts, which we believe are manageable at least through fiscal year 18.
Mr. Secretary, thank you. An American citizen who was not safe, whose parents live in Kansas, Michael Sharp, was killed along with another American in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Last week, Ambassador Haley called on the UN to investigate the murders of those two individuals. Would you find it appropriate to join Ambassador Haley in insisting that the perpetrators be determined, the facts be discovered, and we do everything we can to see that justice is met?
We have already done that through our diplomatic mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo and have called for a full investigation. To the extent we are able to gain information in their investigation, we certainly will make that available to you. But yes, we have called for that as well.
And what's the response of the government? Have they cooperated? Is there results that...
My understanding is investigations are underway. What an investigation in the Democratic Republic of Congo may entail versus the way we carry out law enforcement is something we're trying to at least monitor and make sure we're asking all of the right questions.
The investigatory role is being carried on by the Democratic Republic of Congo, not by anyone representing the United States.
We've not, I would say, been able to put in place independent investigatory authority there with the Democratic Republic of Congo at this time. We're working with them.
One of the concerns I have with this budget is that we don't operate in a vacuum. As I talk to our military leaders, certainly terrorism is on their list of worries. Senator Graham gave you a long list, but our military officers often tell me that Russia is our greatest challenge. Others, certainly all of them, will include China on the list of concerns for our country's role in the world. Investment in the State Department's programs, when they're reduced, gives other countries the opportunity to advance their causes if we leave any gap unfilled. And so I would ask you, with this budget, what would you expect to occur in regard to particularly China, but also Russia, and their ability to increase their influence around the globe, which in my view is to the detriment of the United States and its well-being. China just last month pledged $124 billion for a new global infrastructure program. We are reducing USAID missions and eliminating economic development assistance to 37 countries around the globe. And it's the issue, in addition to me, is in addition to the humanitarian, the rightness of the cause, is that others will take advantage of our absence.
Well, we are already seeing that happening, particularly in Southeast Asia, but in parts of Africa and elsewhere, particularly as to the rise of China. And I think our challenge is, in China's case, it is a centrally command-controlled economy. So when they come with economic, not just loans, assistance, but also companies to carry out infrastructure projects, they get the whole package. And so countries that enter into these arrangements, and we are talking to these countries and cautioning them about what they're getting themselves into in terms of getting themselves overburdened with loan commitments to China, that when China offers to build a railroad, build a road, build a port, they don't do it with local employment. They bring Chinese employment in, and then those Chinese employment never goes home. We see this happening. We're working with partners in the region. This was a subject of discussion when Secretary Mattis and I attended OSMIN, our 2+2 ministerial last week in Australia, as well as in our conversations with New Zealand, Singapore, and others. One of the approaches we are exploring is whether we can get the World Bank to also bring its mission to Southeast Asia, bring more private equity, private sector investment dollars to the region, and bring more counsel and advice to countries and give them another alternative around how to finance these projects, get more private sector involvement there. What's required to get the private sector to engage is some of these countries have to continue to improve their investment climate, like Vietnam, the Philippines, and others. We're working with them on what's necessary, and in our meetings with the ASEAN countries, they see this threat. They see it, they feel it, and so we do have to be there with an alternative. To your point, you're exactly right. We have to come with an alternative, but our alternative can't be solely achieved through the funding available through state or USAID. We really have to mobilize a much broader effort, and that's how we're responding.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.